I'm Edwin Warfield, the publisher of Citybiz. I'm honored today to introduce Lawson DeVries, a general partner at GrowTech Ventures, who will be interviewing Simon Berg, the CEO of Ceros. Welcome, Lawson and Simon.
Very happy to be here with my friend Simon Berg, my business.
Hold on. We never officially agreed I was your friend.
Fair enough. I appreciate the clarification. But no, I'm happy to be here. Always happy to be with Simon. As Edwin said, I'm a general partner at GrowTech Ventures. GrowTech has had a 4-year history with Simon and his company Ceros, and I've been on the board for those 4 years and enjoyed the ride so far. And happy to have Simon on a Maryland and Baltimore oriented podcast. Simon has more connection to the area than he ever thought he would ever have. And,
it's so weird. It's so weird.
It is. And it's good to have you here. You obviously have worked with us for over 4 years. You've worked with our friends at Greenspring Associates for about 2 years. And you also acquired a Baltimore-based company called Arbit that our friends Alex and Greg started. And they are now pieces of the Ceros puzzle and doing exciting things with your Markup product, which we'll hear more about today. But welcome to the podcast. And I think it'd be good to start with some of your pre-Ceros work experience. Edwin did exhaustive research in terms of some of your older days and work stories, something about a tea gopher and some of the more upstart days of the Berg.
It's interesting, actually, Lawson. I don't know if I've ever told you the story. Maybe have I ever told you the story?
It was news to me. That's why I was surprised that Edwin was able to dig up something that not even I knew.
Yeah, it's interesting. I must have told you at some point, but any road. So yeah, I mean, as whenever I tell the stories, I always start with the fact that I'm clearly English. You can hear that from the accent, and I was born in good old England in a little tiny town that you'll never have heard of called London, and grew up the brother of an older brother, and we were in central London, and I actually left school with a desire to go into the design and marketing space. I actually tried to get into college to be a designer, and I failed. And the reason I failed is that I didn't have a breadth of skills. I didn't have the right grades because I was terrible academically. I was awful. I think you've heard me say that, Lawson, but I was awful academically, terrible. And I left with an A in art and an A in technology and basically flunked everything else. And it's obviously kind of noteworthy that I had an A in art and an A in technology, given that we've created a tool that bridges art and science, and that's where we ended up disrupting the design world. And one journalist said to me recently, about a year ago, they were interviewing me and I told that story. They said, it's interesting that you would have been turned down by a design school and then went on to begin to disrupt the very industry they told you weren't qualified to join. And when that journalist said that to me, instead of being all tough, I actually welled up and cried a bit. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never really thought of that. Yeah. Interesting. But anyway, so that was my very beginnings of this whole thing. And I went to work in a business. It was owned by 3 folks, one of which was my father. So I my dad gave me a bit of a leg up chip on my shoulders, never got away. Worked there from the age of 16. And my father may well have let me in the door, but he did not put the silver spoon in my mouth. He hit me over the head with it occasionally, but he didn't put it in my mouth. And I basically, like my brother, worked very hard. Found out very quickly that being the son of one of the bosses means you have to do twice as much for half the respect. And that just meant that me and my brother worked very, very hard for many, many years in that organization, which was in magazine publishing, and essentially went from what was a business that did production and print services over the course of 18 years, 19 years, starting as the T-boy. I did pretty much every job in that organization that you could think of, including CTO at one point, group operations director, and everything in between. Ultimately ended up as CEO for 3 years. And I took over as the CEO of that company officially, as my dad semi-retired. The other 2 partners had left, and it was just me and my brother and a bunch of executives. I took over in 2008, right when the shit hit the fan. And I was handed the reins of every part of the business, including the finances piece. And it was probably the most intense learning curve in my life. I always say I think I learned more in the 2 years from 2008 onwards than you could learn in 10 years in Harvard Business School. No offense, Lawson. And emerged from that with a really interesting business that was in print, digital, video, and photography, in production. And we launched some software products. One of those products was Ceros. And around that same time, we got acquired by a private equity firm. I stayed for a year and then agreed with them that I would leave and take Ceros with me, went to America and looked to find money and ended up an Englishman in New York.
Yeah, it's very helpful context and obviously brings us to sort of the next stage in the story. And you've got a unique founding story in terms of kind of those early sort of days between CrowdFusion and Ceros. So I think it might be helpful to spend a few minutes on that. Obviously, that was formative in terms of not only the company, but also the composition of your board and your investor base. So maybe give us a little color on that.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I came to the States. I said I became an Englishman in New York, but really what happened was I actually went around trying to raise money a bit in England for this new, Ceros really then was an interesting technology. It was flash-based. It was very focused around the magazine space and magazines and catalogs. But the vision for it was bigger. And I struggled to get money in England. They didn't jive well. And it was the CEO that took over at my old agency that said, you should go to New York and try and pitch some VCs there. And I did. He introduced me to one called Greycroft. I met with Greycroft. Where Alan Patrikoff, if you're in the finance world, I'm sure you know who Alan Patrikoff is. Alan Patrikoff, who was in the meeting when I pitched the part of the meeting, he fell asleep. Alan, if you ever hear this, sorry that I told everyone that, but it's true. And I thought at the time that meant he was bored, but I've come to realize that actually it meant that he trusted us and Ian Sigalo at the time enough that he didn't need to pay too much attention. And that basically what ended up culminating from that was that Ian rang me up about a week later and said, look, we actually love your team, like you as a CEO, love the product idea, but the technology is awful and outdated. You need to fast forward. And I'm going to think about it, but I'm not sure if there's something to do. And about a week later, he rang me back and said, I have another company in my portfolio called CrowdFusion. And they are an interesting company, but they've ended up very services heavy and not really generating any software revenue. And as a result, the engineering talent's great, but I'm not sure it's going to turn into a good return for us as investors. And he said, if you can get them to buy your company, appoint you as the CEO, and you move to New York, I'll give you $2 million. And I'm pretty sure he said it because he wanted me to get out of his office because I talk too much. And then I went and did it. And here we are.
So I got to ask, because I'm sure some people are thinking it's Ceros, where did that name come from? What does it mean? I know some people probably have a thought on that.
Yeah, sure. Fortunately, there's a good story behind it. I'll keep it short. When we launched the software product in the agency, I was always jealous that publishers used to give magazines, because you used to do a lot of work with magazine publishers, they used to give magazine launches secret names like Project Vera or Project Fish. And I was always jealous that we never launched anything like that. And when we built software products, we were our own software products, I wanted to give it a project name. And I was in the room with my very good friend Ramesh, who was also my CTO at the time, and said, we should give it a project name. And he looked up over the monitor and he said, we should call it Project Rhino. And I said, why? And he said, well, they're big and tough and stuff. So why not? I was like, okay, Project Rhino it is. So we lived under the name of Project Rhino for a year while we built the first version of the platform. Then we needed to name it. And my then CMO, Dominic Duffy, also co-founder of Ceros, came in one day after bringing in terrible names, and he walked in and he said, Ceros. And I said, okay. And he said, the domain's available. I said, okay, but why Ceros? And he said, Project Rhino. And I said, yeah, but why Ceros? He said, Rhinos Ceros. I was like, oh, that makes sense. And Ceros was born. So there's a debate about whether it was Ramesh or Dom, chicken and egg, because if Ram hadn't called it Rhino, we would have never have got Ceros. So who really named it?
And there you have it. And Simon, you've sort of touched on the company, the product to some extent, but maybe just for the listeners, give us sort of a rundown of exactly sort of what the Ceros platform does and sort of the value prop associated with it.
Sure. So the company exists because I have a somewhat deranged obsession with creativity and how powerful it is. So that's why we exist. Most companies skip the why, but we really know why, and it's a very near and dear to me. We exist because we think creativity matters. We want to unlock creativity for businesses and people around the world. And what we do right now is we focus ultimately on unlocking that creativity in the digital space by empowering non-coders to be able to create what we describe as digital experiences that you can use in an organization anywhere from awareness to advocacy in your marketing efforts. So it could be sales presentations, but it could be embedded content on your website, page takeovers, landing pages, infographics, digital ebooks, any kind of digital experience you would think of, even games and quizzes, with no limits. There's literally almost no limits to it. And that infinite creative freedom brings about a better digital experience, which brings better engagement and happier customers. And we empower our brands to do that. And there's about 700 plus brands at this point on the platform, which I still can't believe. It's true, apparently.
Yep. No, when we invested, you were sub 100. So it's been incredible to see the growth.
Right, man.
Yeah, one of my favorite metrics and graphics you and I both like to look at, that since we invested, the chart just continues to go up and to the right. And it's a testament of your product, your team, and the timing of the product. And,
no, you got in at a very good time. As you well know, as with all startups, we went through the chasm of doom, or the trough of despair, depends which way you want to call it. Like treading through the desert, but we did that. We did that before you arrived, and it's been pretty much good times since. Still hard, but mostly good.
Yeah, no doubt. And one thing that I'm sure has a lot to do with the success and the up and to the right with the 700 customers is your culture. And I will say, having been involved with dozens of companies over my close to 16 years in doing this, I can honestly say that you guys have the most unique culture in a positive way that I've seen in that 16 years. And you feel it when you walk into the office. And obviously, even now in a pandemic, nobody's walking into that office, but I know you still have it. And so maybe just give me and the listeners your best sort of description of how you've created such a, to use a cliche, sort of magical culture within the company.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that. I genuinely, as you talk about it, if I let myself feel stuff, I feel emotional. I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I am truly, truly, truly blessed to have the people that we've got together at Ceros. I am blessed and fortunate that every day that I would physically go into the office, and now every day I go into the virtual office, I'm doing it with just a bunch of really good people that just largely are all singing from the. They're really diverse, but there's some moral fibers and some sort of fundamentals that just tie us together. And I think the short answer, Lawson, as to how we've done that and why that culture is so unique. And don't get me wrong, there's 1% that are my organization that don't like the company, but we know from our NPS surveys, and it keeps getting better. Around 85 to 90% of the organization genuinely either loves it or likes it, which is pretty incredible. And I think the answer to why we've achieved that is one word: authenticity. I am who I am, and I'm not going to pretend anything otherwise. And I blend in with that, a lot of energy and drive, and everybody around me that I'm fortunate enough to have working with me, my executives chair, are authentic, driven, passionate people that will strongly advocate for what they need to, but they'll also get in touch with their feelings, be compassionate, empathetic, and thoughtful, whilst also strong and driven. And there's something in that chemistry that creates a place that people like.
No, I think it's true. And Simon and I've always joked that we've got a mole in the company, and that one of my partner's stepdaughters works for the company. And we can honestly say from her that the feedback is all true, and it's not just a mirage that I see from sort of my cheap seats as a board member, but it is truly impressive. And I will say that Simon has the ability to be philosophical in a lot of ways on a lot of different topics, and I think he takes that into the company, into the board meeting as well. And of all my boards, I probably have spent the most time sort of talking about issues well beyond the company, personal issues, and just human and people issues with Simon versus, all of my other CEOs. And so I can sort of tell that Simon probably does something similar within his own organization.
Honestly, Lawson, it's so true. And do you know why I do that? Because if you stop for a second and think about it, we are all ants on a rock in a giant abyss with no purpose. If you take a moment and realize that, because it's actually true, unfortunately, you don't have to take yourself too seriously, and you need to recognize something. The game that we play every day is just that. It's a game. At the end of the day, we're all humans. Whether you're a billionaire or a homeless person, you're all humans, and you all feel sad, you all feel happy, you all have doubts, you all have question marks, you all have uncertainties, you all love, you all cry. And as a result of that, if you can keep pushing that home authentically, I think it really tips people on their heads, especially folks in finance, in my experience. It confuses them.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I remember where I was when we negotiated our deal to work together a little over 4 years ago. And I remember that conversation, and, those conversations are never easy, but ours was surprisingly easy in terms of not only that negotiation, but just the way we've worked together. And I've seen you negotiate $6 million transactions, and I've seen you negotiate multi-$100 million transactions, and you are truly yourself through all of them.
No different, right? It's so funny. I think it's such a superpower, and it's so accessible to everybody. That's why I like talking about it. I'm like, the thing that you like about me isn't magical. I just be me, and you can do that too, but you're scared to. Just step off the plank, if you will. Take the step. It's fine. But I appreciate that, Lawson. It's very kind of you.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, speaking of humans, Alex and Greg, obviously, as Edwin said at the beginning, Baltimore connections there. The product that has been put together by you and Alex and Greg called Markup. Maybe give us a little bit of color in terms of that product and where that product is headed.
Ceros was born as an enterprise platform, and often is the case. I like to think of the way that I approach business is just enough strategy, just enough thinking, so that you can remain authentic and follow the right course. And when we launched Ceros, we wasn't 6, 7, 8 years in the future thinking about it. So we were an enterprise product. And we've always had an aspiration, if you think about our purpose, which is to, inspire, educate, and then empower people to be more creative. We have 700 customers, about 5,000 users. Very successful business to this point. It's been, we've done very well. Lots more to do, but we've done very well. But what I'm driving towards here is, it saddens me that what we do, who we are, what we stand for, and how we inspire and educate and empower is real. People connect with it. It's genuine. We don't do it enough. So something in the back of my mind, or we don't touch enough people in that sense. Something in the back of my mind has always been irritated by that. And a way from a technology point of view to get around that is freemium. If I can create something that is part of the creative process that is free, there is at least philosophically a way for us to impact not just 5,000 people, but maybe 50,000 or 100,000 or 1 million or millions of people. And that could allow us to do more in the world ultimately. That's the sort of emotional side of me. But then from a business perspective, there is a real need in the world for people to be able to collaborate and communicate on digital content, whether it be a PDF, a PowerPoint, a website, whatever. And Ceros, of course, is one type of digital experience. So we basically built a platform that allows you to collaborate and comment contextually in a very simple way on digital experiences for that very reason. And as a result, we've expanded that. We're now at 50,000 users have signed up to that free platform at this point, growing incredibly fast, and it's been tremendously impactful. And I'm very excited about its future. And I think there's a bigger story to be told around how that dovetails into the wider vision of Ceros hopefully being a company one day that doesn't have one markup, it has 14 markups. And it doesn't have 50,000 users in its freemium network. It has 5 million users in its freemium network, all using these tools, being driven towards the inspiration and education and the empowerment of the platform, and ultimately driving towards meaningful business relationships where they make sense, and turning us into something that might one day eat Adobe's lunch, dare I say. I'm that ambitious. Why not? Could happen. I mean, weirder things have happened.
I'll take it. And I think that's a good segue into COVID. You know, COVID has had obviously an impact on everybody and businesses particularly. So I'm curious in terms of the impact at a business level on Ceros, and then on an emotional and people level, you know, how you guys are faring and doing, which I know, but I'm sure others would be interested.
Sure. So I think the first question I would ask you, Lawson, is what's COVID? I've never heard of that. Sorry.
Me neither.
Such a child. Yeah, it is odd. So, I mean, COVID's got everyone's got a COVID story and what it meant to them and where they were and where they were in their life and how it was incredibly good for them or incredibly bad for them or really confusing and changed their life in all kinds of ways. We were in a position where we were in the middle of a deal, trying to close the most significant round of funding and or new investment partner in SCP. Slap bang in the middle of that when COVID hit. We were 20 days into a 35-day close when COVID hit. It also meant that the deal died that we were working on with those guys. It went away. They called me and cancelled it on my birthday. They didn't know it was my birthday. But happy birthday, Simon. Don't worry, this giant $100 million deal, biggest thing in your entire life, dies on your birthday. 2 days after you found out the world has a pandemic. Just like, but nonetheless, what happened after that was I put the phone down. My wife and I sobbed for about 10 minutes, and then we went and got blind drunk and said, screw it, who cares? And like I often do, is I felt very emotional for about 24 hours. And then I woke up one morning and jumped out of bed with a weird vigor and saying, let's go get it. And that's pretty much what happened, Lawson, for us. And you know that, is that I found myself having this moment as a creative who thrives when, you know, adversity and constraint is in my opinion, when you face adversity and you are constrained, it's the birthplace of creativity. And it just hit me. I was like, wait a minute. All the rules have gone. It's all gone away. Everything that was is no longer true. The data isn't the data. The rules that the investors look at don't make any sense. The models don't work anymore. Everybody's going, what to do now? And as a creative individual, that to me was just, I found myself oddly inspired by that. And also in some bizarre way, charged to lead and help my team who were petrified, as was I. We were all petrified, terrified. I mean, I literally felt I'm genuinely welling up. And I mean that sincerely. And it was between, again, with my team and everybody else, we just came together and did what we could do. We accepted the things that we couldn't control. We controlled what we could. We focused. We cut all the bullshit out. We stopped hiring. We didn't fire a single person. I got on a call with my team. You know, Lawson, I had some fights with the board about whether I should be making a 20% cut. Not that you suggested that, but maybe there were some suggestions that we should do that. And I fought hard against it and said, no, these people were good yesterday. They're good today. And we have the cash to survive. We are going to survive and thrive. And I told the team on a call, I am not going to fire you until the very last minute. So let's stick together and make it through. And they did, like an unbelievable army of totally dedicated human beings. They just came together and said, fuck the world. We are going to do this. We're not going to curl up in a ball and hibernate. We're not going to frivolously pretend this isn't a problem. We're going to survive and thrive. And they did. And we came out the other end with probably one of the best years in our history in terms of performance. And we were fortunate that digital is important. But yeah, it's been a very interesting time. And I have discovered things about myself that I would never have known prior to it. You know, death, despair, sorrow, yes. But I've grown as a human. I've discovered I like writing, as an example. Wouldn't have done that without COVID.
Yeah, Simon sends out a company-wide email that the board gets to every Monday since COVID hit. So I think last week or maybe this week was week 38 of said writing. But it's
as emotional and real and genuine most weeks as I am being on this too. So sometimes it starts with, just for the record, guys, I'm in a really bad mood and I don't want to write this, but I'm doing it because I love you all.
No, it's wide ranging in terms of the topics, no doubt, and always an interesting read. And yeah, we as a board and as an investor base, and you even more so as the company, have lived through a relatively tumultuous 8 to 9 months. But I will say that the company, as you said, is having a good year, and that's not not a trivial thing in this environment. And it does also have a testament to your product. I mean, obviously, digital right now is a hot topic, and so that is something that you've benefited from. And maybe as we sort of trend towards the finish here, give us a little bit of color in terms of your thoughts on the future. Sort of digital transformation is the term of art, but how you guys are thinking about capitalizing on digital and going forward with both Markup and the core Ceros platform.
Yeah, I mean, I have a vision that has become clearer in the last 3 weeks than last 4 weeks for some reason than I've ever had more clarity actually was. And you've not heard this, so here you go. I had this realization the other day. I was thinking about, I was watching, as many days, I was watching CNN, and it turned out on CNN, I found out that Amazon Prime is in 87% of American homes. Think about it. 87% of American homes are paying at least $140 a month. Sorry, a week. Sorry, $140 a month, a year. Sorry, subscription to Jeff Bezos. That's an incredible SaaS business. And if you actually scratch the surface and say, what is he giving you again for that? He's giving you some TV and relatively low-cost parcels. There's not a lot else going on there. And he's managed to get 87% of American homes. And that got me thinking, because then I looked at the business a bit more, I scratched my head and sort of like, what is it? What's he doing there? And he's actually he's found this amazing way to turn all of his technology that he's used to build his business into something that he repackages and sells to others. That's kind of interesting. And then, of course, there's a marketplace, and he takes a slice of every transaction and makes a lot of money. Now, the fact that he's got too much money, and with Congress needs to do something, is a whole nother discussion. But the reason I mention it, and you're thinking, where are you going with this? The answer is that I think I'm seeing something start to emerge in my mind where Ceros could trend in that direction and focus on similar revenue streams, because I've realized that what we have is an ecosystem that is inspiration, education, and then empowerment. Right now it's Ceros and Markup. But if you imagine a world where there were 9 other Markup type tools and the core platform, could one imagine a universe where 2 million people are using all our free tools, and maybe 300,000 of them are paying for one point solution that they found useful? And as you drive them in, there's ultimately this core subscription, Ceros Prime, for this analogy, that costs $600 a year, as an example. That's not a consumer price, that's a business price. Every user pays $600. And as a result of that, they get access to all 12 products, all educational programs, all inspirational material, everything. So you can start to see in a world where you find every organization say, look, every user that's basically doing anything where they're communicating digitally, salespeople, marketing people, designers, needs a Ceros subscription, because they need to use at least one, if not all 12 of these tools in some way to do their job every day. At which point you could imagine a very large business with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, if not $1 billion of revenue, and 2, 3, 4 million users all over the world leveraging the platform through the lens of making them all more creative and inspiring them to be more creative and educating them to be more creative. And then if you then look at that and say, well, what would the Jeff Bezos model be with that? You take the server platforms and the technologies that we've built, turn them into services that people can leverage, whether it be AI or any type of technology that's related to creativity that other platforms might need, and you can sell that back to those individuals to empower them to be creative. And then finally, those millions of users, of which maybe 500,000 are power users, could you take those users and connect them with marketers and salespeople and business people that need creative assets created? At which point you have that model between the buyer and the seller, not dissimilar to the one going on at Amazon. So that is my vision for where I want us to be 5 or 6 years from now, to the point where you walk in an organization and you go, I assume you use Ceros, right? Somewhere. You got it. You're using it somewhere. Either you've got it for everyone or you're using it somewhere. That's where I want to go.
Yeah, no, as you can tell from Simon's description, he is a interesting blend of art, science, and math, and all of the above. Maybe less math, but no, it's it's a compelling vision, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you one last question, Simon. In terms of, I know a lot of companies right now are thinking about office space, thinking about in-person work, and this is something I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about as a leader. Maybe give us a little bit of where you stand in terms of that and the use of the office space. Your office in New York has won awards for just being incredibly creative in terms of its setup and the look and feel of it, and I absolutely love it. But as you know, times have changed. So just curious in terms of your thoughts on that, because I think a lot of other kind of leaders and people could benefit from your perspective.
Sure. First thing I'll say is that I grew up my entire career building culture by being in the office, building a place that feels so much like home, not in an unauthentic way, but in a genuine way. Give me an ability to connect with people. It allows me to change a light bulb in front of 25-year-olds to say, let's see, I'm still humble. There's something about that. I didn't think I could live without it, and COVID has gifted me that I can actually live without it. That was what drove us to say what we said, Lawson, to the team about 4 months ago or 5 months ago, which is that we are a remote-first company. We always will be from now on. And that does not mean that we won't have physical spaces and that they're not important, but it means everybody in the office every day is never, ever, ever, ever coming back to Ceros, period. The end. It's not happening. That's gone. And the way I see it is a hybrid, like many people. And the way I would describe that ideal scenario, if I could get rid of my leases like everybody would like to right now, I would have one large office in the key city, probably Manhattan right now, and satellite offices where clusters appear. And those offices wouldn't really be offices, they'd be physical experiences, places to go and connect with others, thoughtfully and intentionally, rather than the traditional office, which was go in every day because that's what you do. You go when you need the human connection, or you're yearning for a brainstorm, or you have a client meeting, you want to have lunch and hang out and chat for a piece. You thoughtfully and intentionally use the physical space like a tool rather than just a thing you use every single day. And the way that looks in my mind, if I picture the perfect Manhattan office for me, it would be a ground floor office for the first time ever. It would have a coffee shop in it that the public can use. It would have open spaces that people can use as desks, half for the public, half for Ceros people. I imagine there being brainstorm environments where people can go for specific brainstorming activities and collaboration projects, and then an event space that we collaborate in physically with our partners and customers, etc. And Ceros then becomes a living, breathing thing that you can interact with intentionally as a customer, as a member of the public, or as an employee. And then the final piece of the puzzle, if I had infinite amounts of money and no one was telling me what not to do, is I would like a remote location that would be our holiday vacation come together space where we would go 4 times a year as a team. And it would be probably somewhere warm, but maybe upstate, like a ranch. And we go there for 10 days or a week. We hang, we drink, we eat, we chat, we build teams, we get to know each other, and we, have fun and just connect on a human level 4 times a year. And then everyone would go back to their respective places, enjoy the balance that they find in life today. The world would be a happy place. So no, and Austin, I've not thought about it at all.
No doubt. And then last question, what was more fun, Simon, getting interviewed by me or interviewing Mark Cuban a couple of weeks ago?
Well, Austin, I think the answer to that is obviously being interviewed by you. Mark Cuban is not interesting at all.
Well, Simon,
actually, for the record, he was fun. So.
Yeah, no, I saw it and I enjoyed it myself. So, well, listen, Simon, I really appreciate your time, and obviously great to work with you. It's been a fantastic 4 years. Looking forward to another great couple years in front of us, and also good to get you in front of a Maryland-based audience. And yeah, Edwin, I appreciate you setting this up.